That's not fair, is it? So we get into this situation where we're in this food roller coaster. And the steps of the roller coaster really are cue, and I'll talk more about these. Cue, activation, arousal, and then release. Well, first of all, the cue is just simply the sight, the sound, the smell, the environment, the, whatever. And many scientists, many psychologists are now beginning to believe, in fact, Dr. Brownwell that we first talked about, he is a big proponent of this, that in many cases, the anticipation, once we've learned and we've built some of this neural chemistry and these neural networks, that the anticipation of having something that you really like is even greater than actually having it. Okay? Think about it. If you ever just, wow, I'm just really craving, Taco Bell or whatever it is. And I just got to have it. I got to have it. And then once you have it, it's like, it wasn't really that good. You ever had that experience? So the anticipation of it often is more powerful than actually the consumption. And so that cueing can be really, really powerful. Second of all, that cueing then gets the brain activated because that anticipation gets dopamine levels up. It gets the amygdala to get all fired up. It gets the opioids to start flowing so that you get that euphoria and that pleasurable feeling around it, which causes you then to have the craving, the drive to want to have it, the arousal. And at this point it branches. There's two things that can happen. One is that you could become distracted by something more important, and then everything calms back down and it's all okay. Or two, you could actually consume the item, since we're talking about food in this case, you could consume that food item, and then there's a release. But here's the rub. The rub is this, that the essence of education truly is repetition. That's how we learn, right? Through repetition. Think about it. What's 4 times 4? What's 12 times 12? What's 7 times 6? What's 99 times 12? Come on. Oh, that one's not automatic. Why? Because you haven't had enough reps to know that it's 1,188. Right? You haven't had that repetition. So education truly is all about repetition. Sorry about that. I'm not sure why that keeps popping up. And so really what we're doing, now we think of learning as exactly that, some cognitive, accumulation of facts and figures and things like that. But what we're really talking about is learning. Repetition builds neural networks that then become automatic response. That's really what we're talking about. So that when we go through this process of continually moving from, instead of arousal to distraction, if it's going all the time arousal to release, that's what builds those neural networks so that the response is automatic. And it becomes very difficult to shut off. And that's why we crave a lot of times things, although we're saying to ourselves, well, I don't really want that, or I really can't have that, or I'm not really hungry, but the automatic response is there. It's built in. So, this is what leads to what's called a conditioned hypereater. Think about the title there. It's very descriptive. Conditioned. It's not a disease, or it's not even a pathological, what would you call it? It wouldn't be like a bulimic or an anorexic that has a disorder. It's conditioned. Just like Pavlov, right? Pavlov's dogs, I guess he had more than one. But, he basically trained them that all he had to do eventually is just ring the bell and they would start salivating, right? He conditioned them. Well, it's the same thing. That we become conditioned hypereaters, where we condition ourselves that we overeat because we can't stop. Mentally, we got all these things going on. So, I talked about that a little bit. So basically what we've done is we've learned that we want certain foods at certain times, and we want lots of it, to the point that it's no longer about hunger and about survival. It's simply about the objective of the brain is that whole euphoric kind of pathway that we've just talked about. rather than simply getting the food that we need. Estimates at this point are from the research that about 50% of obese people are these conditioned hypereaters, 30% of overweight, and about 20% of healthy people. That's 70 million Americans that have this type of condition. I'm actually going to suggest, though, that almost all of us have tendencies somewhere along this spectrum. I think most of us have some kind of tendency. We may be on one end of the spectrum or other, but when you think about the not just the physiological, but the psychological elements of this, probably all of us have at least some kind of tendency towards this. I know I certainly do. Let's talk about the food industry's role in this. The food industry has what they call the three-point compass. That in most cases, they know that if they can hit at least two of these 3 points, they're going to form those neural pathways that are going to cause you to have a very difficult time saying no. I don't think any of those three are probably a surprise to you. Sugar, fat, and salt. And the thing is that for years, the food industry hasn't known the science that we've just talked about. They've just known that if we put these things in the food, it will drive consumption. And now they're starting to learn. In fact, Dr. Kessler, he's actually made it an effort to go and meet with some of the heads of many of these food companies and fast food restaurants and etc. and tell them, okay, I won't tell who you are, but can you answer some questions for me? And he's been pretty successful in getting them to admit that we definitely try to layer these things into food so that people will consume more. In fact, one particular, he wouldn't say who, but one particular CEO of not a fast food, but a chain restaurant actually said, wow, the very things that have made us successful are the very things that are creating the problems. He said that. He quotes that in his book. Again, he doesn't say who. So, what they know and they understand is that, first of all, the more multi-sensory the experience is, the higher the dopamine gets and the less it habituates. The more the amygdala gets stimulated, and therefore you store the emotions related to the consumption of that food. And the more the opioids come in and create this pleasurable experience. And so ice cream is a good example. We have the blizzard up there. Well, ice cream in itself, you got the multi-sensory combination of sugar, fat, and cold. How many of you like ice cream? I love it. It's probably my biggest weakness. Okay? I love ice cream. And so there's good reason why we all like ice cream. I don't know of anybody that doesn't like ice cream. Oh, you don't? Okay.
It's okay.
It's okay, but not great. Good. Well, good for you. That's really good. But now we add in other things, like a Heath bar that gives it some more sweetness and some texture. Some hot fudge. Now you got some temperature changes going on in there. Maybe some nuts. Am I making everybody hungry? You got the aroma of the chocolate and the hot fudge and everything. Then start adding in maybe in this case the packaging. Take a look at that container, Blizzard, and look at all those fruits across the front of it. There's nothing fruity in there, They got all these nice fruits. It looks so appealing, And then you go into DQ itself, and you got this restaurant that's probably decorated real nice. So you got this whole environment that plays into building these neural networks around the emotion and the pleasure and the euphoria and all that type of stuff. It becomes very, very difficult to say no. And the thing is it's everywhere. Think about, I can remember as a kid, I actually grew up in the Farmington area up there, and I can remember the very day McDonald's opened. I was probably about 9 or 10 years old, the first time McDonald's opened in that town. And, we begged Mom and Dad, come on, can we go get a burger over there, and everything. And I don't know, a couple weeks later they maybe took us. We hardly ever got to go out, back then you didn't go out to eat very often. And so, but I remember they weren't open 24 hours. They didn't serve breakfast.